Alright folks, so last time we saw our King of Ruin wished to kick out the Dark Elf refugees from the Dark Forest for safety reasons, but since the elves were already driven from their own land and had nowhere else to go, Takuto felt bad and decided to take them in as his own citizens. Now, becoming his citizens meant turning into evil beings, and since the Dark Elves had no better option, they accepted the offer. With it, everything was going on track. They had gained a vast piece of land and beautiful citizens to begin building an evil civilization, except, there was one little problem: the land they claimed sat dangerously close to two great kingdoms. The kingdom of elves and humans, both of which were strong followers of God and nature, and if they finds out an evil kingdom had risen nearby, they would likely unite to wipe it out. And unfortunately, the saint from the human kingdom sensed an unusual disturbance in the dark forest, but for now, she was heading somewhere with a squadron of knights. Some of those knights believed the saint's overwhelming power is just exaggerated rumors, but that illusion vanished the moment a horde of monsters appeared and the saint took it out herself. One inferno spell was all it took, proving that she was more of a weapon than a holy woman. Then after the fire died out, the land once again turned fertile. Saint is one of the reasons the human kingdom was able to maintain such strong ties with the elven kingdom. There are 7 saints in total, but right now, this one had instructed the cardinal to send paladins to investigate the Dark Continent. However, the cardinal refused. So the saint said she would go herself, leaving the cardinal with no choice but to manage and comply. Deep down he hated the saint because she came from the countryside, and painfully the saint was aware of that. Yet her pure heart only wanted to protect the people. Then back in the dark forest, Atu was cheering for the dark elves to work diligently. They had already completed a residence for Takuto and were prepared to build homes and other necessities. And to keep things in order and move faster, they decided to hold their first council meeting. But before that, Emil brought a new outfit for Takuto. He loved it so much that he forgot there was a meeting waiting for him. Then Elder Molter started the agenda. First, they had to prioritize what to build. People were already out gathering lumber and Atu suggested that they should start with a food production facility. Molter thought Takuto could just summon it, but Atu didn't want to bother their king with something that minor. Besides, once their land expands, distribution problem would arise. That's why Atu introduced the flesh tree. This tree produces meat that tastes like human flesh, which sounded evil enough that Molter said many people will reject the idea of eating it. Still, Atu and Takuto insisted they should try planting it first and judge it later. After that came the food storage, which Emil took responsibility for. Then they moved to discuss national development. The elder asked which technology they should prioritize on developing, and Atu excitedly recommended magical tech. Atu wanted the elves to begin researching military magic. Usually a normal mage like Elder Molter could handle a group of knights, but Atu's vision was far bigger. She wanted to develop a spell capable of wiping out thousands in one strike, so selecting talented people for research was crucial. Takuto believed it wouldn't be too difficult, and that got Molter fired up. As for the military numbers, the task was passed to Gia, but Takuto suggested they save it for later. So Atu explained that armies don't contribute to production, but Molter sided with Gia on this one, revealing that both he and Gia had bounties on their heads, which meant they needed more guards to protect Takuto. So to solve that, Takuto decided to summon a hero. Atu lit up, saying that although summoning a hero costs a lot of mana, they are powerful. In Mynoghra there are several heroes who serve the king. Each one is unique and powerful in their own way. They are still extremely useful, and Takuto could summon one immediately, though the others had no idea what to expect. Meanwhile, Takuto was gathering mana from his citizens. The happier they were, the more mana they would generate over time, so that will help in developing the nation. But back in the Holy Kingdom, the paladins finally received their orders. A young paladin named Louis was selected in his superior. A high-ranking paladin was someone he found difficult to deal with. He was rude and rough, but no one could deny his skill. Verdel, the high paladin, was complaining about the mission, but since Saint Soalina had received a revelation, they had no choice but to go to Dark Continent for investigation. And if the mission succeeded, they would secure the support of southern provinces. But their forces were lacking in numbers, so Louis had prepared mercenaries for work. Louis didn't like Verdel, but he knew cooperating with him increased their chances of success. Then back in Takuto's city, everything was steadily progressing just like in the game. Homes were being built atop trees, the flesh trees were growing well, the food storage was almost finished, and magical research was going smoothly. They even discovered a source of water as Emil had done a fantastic job turning the settlement into a real town. Takuto was moved by the dedication of his people, and Emil broke into tears of joy that it took a lot to calm her down. Later, they went to inspect the town together. The flesh trees were now fully grown and advanced tools Takuto had produced were accelerating their progress. At this rate, the town could develop faster than anyone imagined. With food now secured, they could focus on other things. Then Emil offered to show their water source, but the path got darker and when they arrived, the water was visibly corrupted. Gia and Multer showed up too and Emil reported that the water supply had gone bad. However, Atu reassured them it was safe to drink. The water had simply been corrupted as part of their growing domain. Even the air they breathed was now corrupted, yet somehow it felt refreshing. This cursed terrain benefits evil beings and harms those of neutral or good beings, and since the Dark Elves were now Takuto's citizens, they too had turned evil, making the land more comfortable for them to live in. This terrain will also serve as a strong defense against invaders, although it did look hideous, and if their domain kept expanding it would eventually draw attention. Atu, however, remained unfazed because Takuto had already made the decision to summon a hero. Gia was still unsure what that meant, so Atu gave a brief demonstration of a hero's power. Because she herself was a hero and the power she showed was just a small glimpse, heroes grow stronger over time, making them ideal for protection. So she was happy that she's enough to meet their current needs, but Takuto told her to clean up the mess she made during her flashy show. Gia was left stunned by the level of power on display. Then the elder mentioned that they were preparing to build a new castle for Takuto, but the king was content with what he had. Still, the Dark Elves wished for their king to live in a grand place worthy of his status, and if it makes them happy, Takuto agreed, though he made one strange request. He wanted a floating castle, like literally a castle in the sky. It sounded impossible, but considering the miracles Takuto had shown, maybe he could make it real, though all of that might have to wait, because those two paladins were already marching toward the Dark Continent. And right there episode 3 ends, but stay tuned to find out what more mysteries unravels in the Lord of Mysteries. Until then, take care.